Hello! There are many different ways to texture a build, but today I am going to show you how I like to do this. I prefer a more messy and colorful style, and for this we first have to understand just a few little things. So let's have a very summarized walkthrough through this. This is wood. We choose spruce because it's pretty. Spruce is usually brown. Other blocks are also brown, so other blocks can also portray spruce. Same goes for green moss, or cyan wood, or jungle planks. You see, these other blocks don't have the exact same color, but they are quite similar. Like so, we can have some variation in our builds and even mess around with lighter and darker spots. You can go even so far to choose a few different blocks for your block palette, and how exactly this works out I will show later. You might already be familiar with picking out different blocks to create some kind of texture, whether it is a gradient or something else. Just sprinkling in randomly some other blocks creates this noisy pattern. Not saying it is an inherently bad way to texture, and for some builds I like to do it too, for example here for these tiny very old huts, but a much more interesting way is to add some sense to it. Next to cracks filled with water could be growing moss, some parts are more used and worn down, and generally this is a bit more sorted. And when in doubt, using a variety of darker and lighter blocks you can make a gradient. Also works going from one color to another. And to give you an idea to experiment with, when you add a layer of glass blocks on top, you can either smooth it out more or create new hues we didn't have before. Around here you can see a few builds that still lack texture. So let's give some color to them. I know a path isn't exactly a building, but I thought, hey, maybe we start with something easy. My idea is that the middle is a bit more worn down, so I want to use a lighter color for that. Strip birch logs and birch planks will do. But first of all, let's smooth it out a bit with slabs. Then I basically just paint down the middle line with the stripped logs and line that with the planks. You can see that I keep it asymmetrical so that it doesn't look too clean. Some patches with packed mud and rooted dirt might look a bit off now, but once you add the details they fit in quite nicely and add more interest to it all. Don't think I should be able to place these blue things on the dirt though. The obvious block choice to add texture to bricks would be granite, as these two look really well together. But to make this wall look more old, I am going to add green parts with moss, some mud bricks and jungle logs. These really are just textured spots on the wall. When doing this, try to not overdo it. In some areas the wall might be damaged or has cracks. When building, really try to imagine these. This is of course just the base layer, so feel free to add leaves onto these spots to make it look overgrown and to tie everything together. Old buildings made out of sandstone and bricks often have the details made out of sandstone. But first let's fill in the window. With placing different colored glass panes in a chessboard pattern you can also create texture. I might keep this rather simple because what I really want to show you is this corner detail. You place the outer line with sandstone and next to that every second block. Despite being flat, it is adding a lot to these kinds of builds. This is just a small section though for demonstration. I usually don't build modern houses, but one way to add something to an otherwise empty wall would be some graffiti. Of course this is not for the brand new parts of a city, but somewhere else, why not? To have this you can look up actual graffiti and emulate the style, but of course use your own design. You can outline text on one side with black or any other color to make them pop. You don't have to overthink this, just splash different blocks on. To fit the vibe of this being a rundown part of a city, I also add these darker spots under the windows resembling dirt that doesn't get washed away by the rain. Oh, and also this person who made the graffiti painted over the glass. Whoops. Imagine this being a tower wall with a few windows. The idea is to create a gradient going from dark grey at the bottom to light grey at the top. On top of that, we will also add spots of texture for variation. When I choose my blocks, I immediately put them in the right order to see how it would look like. Advantage of creative, I guess. I make sure to leave the ledges light grey so that it looks like light is hitting it. but under it I again add dark spots similar as in the examples before. Basically this is a mini gradient as the part directly under the ledge is in the shadow and thus darker. Do that for all of the windows, and then it is time to add sad spots of texture, meaning I add spots that are lighter or a bit darker where I think they look good. Then I go back over everything and really just change more blocks or change them back until I like how this is looking. I do kind of imagine this being a painting, so there are splashes of different colors all over it, but still it looks realistic. Some grey concrete and stone bricks look great, and for the lightest areas I'm adding some light grey wool. Despite being many different blocks, they all look like stone together. Looks really nice for an old castle. This is the corner of a more sus part of a city with trash cans over here. When you know what it is, you can see it, but we can enhance it further with more texture. First I put my focus on the floor and add cracks with water and darker spots, especially near the walls. Similar as in this example. For the buildings, I really want to put the focus on them being neglected at the side and this all being a corner you'd rather avoid. So when texturing, have in mind what you'd like to achieve and what mood you want a build to give you. Here I'm using mud bricks because the texture stands out among bricks and also because it is dirty brownish. Above comes some red terracotta and granite. Then obviously we want the white building to be dirtier at the bottom too, so just make it darker and create kind of a gradient going up. I'm also bringing in the pinkish white terracotta for a tint of color. All in all, this is ending up rather messy, but that is what I want to achieve. Here's another wall where a smaller graffiti would fit in nicely, so I randomly scribbled something on and added more colors to it. Concrete powder is usually a lighter shade of whatever else you're using. Again, all of this makes more sense with some details. Pickles and carpets as trash, and the bottom window of this building is covered by wood. Because no one wants to see this mess. After all of these examples, I'm finally going to show how to texture an actual complete house. But what we learned before can be all used here. So why don't we take this block palette here for the walls and this colorful gradient for the roof, pretty much a bunch of different blocks. Don't worry, somehow this will work out. Starting with the walls, I want to keep them mainly white terracotta, but at the bottom I want to add a rim of mud bricks, packed mud, trimmed jungle logs, bricks and jungle planks. It could be just a different material used at the bottom or the white layer fell off over time. I tried to spread these patches with the mud bricks as they stand out quite a bit. For the roof I am going to use this gradient going from dark blue to yellow. So I pretty much randomly choose a spot to start with one color and then add the next one next to it. I'm not really focused on blending it in perfectly now, it is more to get the colors down. When building a survival though, you'd of course have to plan ahead since you would want to build all of this at once. This part actually reminds me of painting, and when you very light down darker areas and blend them in nicely, it generally looks decent. For other roofs without a gradient, you could still add a very small gradient for shadows and light or spots of texture where moss is growing and blend that in with the rest. When texturing a whole house, make sure to leave big areas with a solid color so that the whole thing doesn't look like being too much. I usually either heavily texture the roof or the walls. When you plan to have a lot of details in your build, I'd also keep the texture subtle to not distract from them. Then it is always time to come back and blend in the colors better, exchange a few, or to change it wherever you want. Usually I can spend forever fixing things I don't like and then changing them back again. But at some point you end up with something you like. Well, of course this is looking rather weird without the other details, so let me quickly add those too. And with that we went through all the examples I wanted to show you. Remember, this is how I like to texture my builds, doesn't mean you have to do it exactly like this. I hope you learned something useful, and until the next time, goodbye.